Okay, this evening, we will update the board and community on the new and revised March 2021 guidance from ISB and IDPH that makes our expansion of in-learning learning possible. We will preview the details of our revisions to schedules and models to return more students to in-person learning. We will communicate updates to our school calendar and review current metrics, including our staff vaccination status. In a letter to superintendents, the Illinois State Board of Education stated, the updated guidance reflects what we have learned about the transmission of COVID-19 in school settings. As more students in Illinois and across the country have returned safely to in-person learning during the 2020-2021 school year. This joint guidance supports the return to in-person instruction as soon as practicable in each community. The revised public health guidance for schools is precipitated by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's recently released and updated guidance that reinforces that schools are an important part of the community infrastructure, that in-person instruction promotes learning recovery along with the well-being of students and families, and the schools therefore should be the last settings to close and the first to reopen when they can safely do so. Taking this into consideration, along with our progress in vaccinating staff, results of surveillance testing, and additional mitigation measures, we are prepared to increase our in-person learning options. The Illinois State Board of Education and Illinois Department of Public Health updated their joint guidance early last week. They continue to prioritize in-person learning and have made important updates to the required mitigation strategies. These changes come as a result of the updated guidance from the CDC that was released in February. Overall, the core mitigation strategies that we have been implementing since the beginning of the school year have not changed. However, they have adjusted the definition of social distancing and changed how capacity limits of spaces are determined. These changes address the barriers that have been making in-person instruction for all students difficult. The definition of social distancing has been changed from 6 feet of distance to the greatest extent possible to 3 feet to 6 feet for students and fully vaccinated staff members who are participating in in-person instruction. The significant change increases the number of students that can be in a classroom at one time. Additionally, the capacity limits for spaces within our buildings has been changed from 50 individuals within one space, regardless of the size of the room, to the number of individuals the space can accommodate with social distancing requirements in place. This change allows us to use all of our spaces within the building more effectively, especially when it comes to serving lunch. Dr. Igo will now talk a little bit more about the guidance.
At the last board meeting, we presented updated guidance from the CDC. While the new IDPH and ISB requirements are based on this guidance, there are some key areas where there are differences. The key foundational components are the same. They are that K-12 schools are essential and should be the last to close and the first to reopen. In-person instruction is prioritized over extracurricular activities, and that the latest research supports that in-person learning is not associated with higher levels of community transmission when compared to schools without in-person learning. However, where the documents differ is in how they approach the layering of the mitigation strategies in determining how to provide in-person instruction. The CDC utilizes the level of community transmission to determine which learning mode is safe to provide. IDPH does not directly tie to the level of community spread to a learning mode. Rather, they are defaulting to in-person learning and encouraging the use of adaptive pauses when necessary to address high levels of community spread, transmission within schools, and the ability to effectively implement essential mitigation strategies. Additionally, they have prioritized in-person learning by adjusting how we will be implementing social distancing during school hours. As Mr. Bridges mentioned, ITPH has changed the definition of social distancing for students and fully vaccinated staff during school hours to 3 to 6 feet of physical distance when universal face masking is in place. This is great news and significantly increases our ability to open schools for in-person learning 5 days per week. I do want to spend some time clarifying what this means and how we will implement this across the district. 6 feet of social distance continues to be the safest, and we will work to provide this distance to the greatest extent possible throughout the school day. When it cannot be maintained, we will analyze the space to determine how we can safely reduce the physical distance between students and physically vaccinated staff. When it has been determined to be necessary, we will cautiously reduce this distance, working our way backwards from 6 feet to 3 feet. We will never plan for less than 3 feet of physical distance between students and fully vaccinated staff. However, there may be incidental, unplanned, or brief moments when students and vaccinated staff are less than 3 feet apart. We will work to minimize these occurrences at all times. 6 feet of social distancing will be strictly adhered to whenever face masks are removed for eating or drinking. This includes lunch and snack times throughout the school day. It also includes when students are outside and taking a face mask break. It's important to note that the IDPA Illinois Department of Health has not changed the definition of close contact. This continues to be less than 6 feet for more than 15 minutes in a 24-hour period. If there's a positive case, students who are seated less than 6 feet from the individual will be required to quarantine for 14 days. As I mentioned earlier, the Illinois Department of Health is recommending that we default to in-person learning and use the adaptive pause approach to determine when schools need to close due to an increased risk of spread. This approach is grounded in the science about how COVID-19 spreads and the limited risk of transmission within schools. While this is not a new approach for the Illinois Department of Health, the changes to the definition of social distancing and the capacity limits to our spaces also align to the recommendations of the Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization, allows us to provide 5 days of in-person instruction to all students who wish to participate. We will continue to carefully monitor the level of community transmission, the transmission level within our schools, and our ability to implement the necessary mitigation strategies, and when necessary, we'll engage in targeted closures focusing on classrooms, grade levels, or schools. We will continue to update the COVID dashboard with this information so that families can review and make informed decisions. Within this new guidance, Illinois State Board of Ed has also revised their requirement that an option for remote learning be provided to all students. Rather, they are recommending that this is an option only for students who are at an increased risk for severe illness or live with someone that's at an increased risk for severe illness. We will continue with remote learning as an option for all students through the remainder of the 2021 school year. In order for a 5-day week of in-person learning to be successful, we will need your help. One of the most effective ways to control the spread of the virus is to reduce the opportunities it has to enter our schools. As we bring more students in and reduce the physical distance within classrooms, it's imperative that we work together to ensure that we're creating a healthy learning environment for everyone by completing daily symptom checks and staying home if anyone in the household is experiencing COVID-like symptoms. Fully cooperating with the DuPage County Department of Health and the school health office when they are conducting contact tracing. If you have not already done so, sign up for surveillance testing to help us identify asymptomatic individuals in grades 6 through 12. If someone from our health office calls to inform you that your student has been in close contact with an infected individual or is experiencing symptoms of the COVID virus, we ask that you cooperate fully with the quarantine and isolation procedures. Please remember these procedures are required by the Illinois Department of Health, and the district does not have the ability to alter these procedures, the timelines, or the requirements for returning to school. Mr. Freund will now explain what a return to 5 days a week of in-person learning will look like for our early childhood and elementary students.
Okay, thank you. Our youngest learners in early childhood will return 5 days per week following spring break. At Ann Reed, our early childhood student schedules will continue as 8:30 to 11 o'clock for the AM session and 12:15 to 2:45 for the PM session. Students in our Preschool for All extended day program will have a schedule of 8:30 to 12:30, 5 days per week. We will continue, as Dr. Igo suggested, with an online option for those families who prefer this for the remainder of this current school year. Online early childhood students will follow the same schedule as their in-person classmates. As Dr. Igo also shared earlier, social distancing and contact tracing continue to be essential mitigation strategies in our classrooms. At early childhood, students and staff will be socially distanced 6 feet wherever possible, but no closer than 3 feet whenever that's not possible. Staff and students will continue to be required to wear face masks other than when outside, and 6 feet of social distancing cannot be maintained. Contact tracing continues to remain at 6 feet following a positive case. As will be the case at all of our levels, increased number of students in person will add more students to our buses. Students are required to wear a mask on the bus, as 6 feet of social distancing will likely not be possible at all times. Up to this point, we recognize many families have chosen to forego eligible busing. In turn, this continues to increase the number of vehicles in the drop-off and pickup lines at our schools. So we ask for patience from our families during that arrival and dismissal time. Our elementary students will also return 5 days per week after spring break. Our elementary school day begins at 8:15 in the morning and ends at 2:30, with all subjects included, as well as art, music, PE, and lunch. We will continue with an online option for those families who prefer it for the remainder of the current school year. And our online students will follow the same schedule with their same teacher as they have been. Just as I referenced on the previous slide with early childhood, students and staff in our elementary schools will socially distance 6 feet wherever possible, but no closer than 3 feet where that is not possible. Staff and students will continue to be required to wear face masks other than when eating or able to socially distance outdoors, and contact tracing will continue with that 6-foot rule in the past 24 hours. Lunch and recess, as I mentioned, are part of our elementary school day. During lunch, a minimum of 6 feet of social distancing will be set while students are eating. In order to provide that full 6 feet between students while eating, students will be spread out beyond the traditional lunchroom, which in many cases are our gyms and multi-purpose rooms at the elementary school. So this could include classrooms, learning common space, stages, and other spaces that are used throughout the building. Students will not be allowed to remove masks until they are seated and ready to eat. They will wear masks out at recess, as we will also not be able to ensure 6 feet of social distancing at that time with the number of students that are typically at recess, as well as the way we know children play while at recess time as well. We are anticipating an increase of students in person, which will also add more students to our buses, just like at the elementary level. Bus capacities remain at 50 individuals, so students will be required to wear a mask on the bus, as 6 feet of social distancing may not be possible. Additionally, we also know many families have chosen to drop off and pick up their child from school, and that has already, even in our hybrid schedule, caused longer lines than in a typical school year. So again, we ask our parents for patience during that process. Elementary parents and early childhood parents, along with our middle school and high school families, will have an opportunity to once again make a switch between in-person and online this week. So those parents will receive an email for each of their students with information about the in-person and online only options that will begin after spring break on April 7. There's no action necessary for parents unless they are switching between those modes. So if they're going to continue with what their student is in now, they can simply delete that email. Mrs. Posey is now going to go ahead and share information about middle school, followed by high school.
Thank you. At the junior high level, we will be returning to our 9 periods day schedule. Students enrolled in this option will attend in person from April 7th through the end of the school year. In-person learning will occur Monday through Friday each week from 8 a.m. to 2:50 p.m. Students attending in person will also attend exploratories like art, music, family and consumer science, Project Lead the Way, world languages, and PE. They will also have lunch and recess as traditionally scheduled during the school day. As mentioned earlier, we will continue to have an online option for families who wish to remain in that learning model. Fully online students will follow the daily 9-period schedule as well through live stream courses, as they have been doing throughout this year. A variety of mitigation strategies will still be in place at each of our school sites. A large portion of our staff have been fully vaccinated, contributing to our mitigation plan. We will continue hand washing, social distancing, and mask wearing for all students and adults. Social distancing will now be 3 to 6 feet, with 6 feet being strictly adhered to during our lunch period. We will add extra supervision to our arrival and departure processes to support these strategies. Surveillance testing will also continue at the junior high and high school levels with an increase to twice a week. We encourage all students to participate in this mitigation strategy. An increased number of students, as Mr. Freund indicated, will add more students to our junior high buses. Bus capacities are set at 50 students. Students are required to wear a mask on the bus as 6 feet of social distancing will likely not be possible. Additionally, we also know that our families at the junior high level have also foregone busing this year, and they have also been dropping off. We ask for patience from our families during arrival and departure, and that our students who do not ride the bus arrive to school no more than 10 minutes prior to the start of school. Effective April 7th and extending through the end of the 2021 academic year, high school students will be welcomed back for in-person instruction all 5 days of the week. High school students will have the opportunity to add in-person learning while continuing to follow our current 4-period-a-day block schedule. We will now alternate between the AB schedule with all in-person students attending each day of the week. We will no longer have Monday as a remote learning day, but will still include staff collaboration and PLC time during the 1:30 to 3 o'clock time period. Due to space constraints, lunch will not be served in the building at this time. To address the concerns that we are not attending a full school day for high school students, I'd like everyone to consider that our current schedule, beginning 10 minutes early and ending at 1:30 p.m., plus a lunch period for every student at the end of the instructional time, only reduces each period by approximately 5 minutes. Teachers are available to support students the remaining 40 minutes of the day, which continues through 3 p.m. We will publish a calendar for the remainder of the school year with specific periods for each day and any alternate schedules for testing, staff collaboration, and etc. for families. Staff will be present in the buildings every day. These changes, as mentioned previously, will be accompanied by the continued use of mitigation strategies to ensure a continued low rate of COVID-19 transmission within district schools. 6 feet of social distancing will be maintained to the greatest extent possible. Social distancing may be reduced to less than 6 feet due to classroom space limitations. Students and staff will be required to wear masks at all time at the high school level, except when eating or drinking, and no lockers will be in use. We will continue to conduct contact tracing as a result of suspected or confirmed cases of COVID-19. Close contact is defined as anyone with or without a face mask who is within 6 feet of a confirmed case of COVID-19 for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period during the infectious time. The infectious period of close contact begins 2 calendar days before the onset of symptoms for a symptomatic person, or 2 calendar days before the positive sample was obtained for an asymptomatic person. We anticipate that the increased number of students in person in our schools will likely result in greater numbers of close contacts and the need for quarantine. Students enrolled in the in-person learning option at the junior high and high school levels will be allowed to switch to the online-only option at any time, but may not return to in-person for the remainder of the 2021 school year, except in circumstances of quarantine. As always, we will work to support families through any extraordinary circumstances. Dr. Igo will now share information regarding specialized instruction.
Students in our elementary and junior high specialized classrooms will follow the school day schedule that was shared on the previous slides. Students in our high school specialized classrooms will attend in person for the block schedule Monday through Friday from 7:35 through 1:30, and Tuesday through Friday are eligible to remain at school for lunch and an afternoon instruction until 3 p.m. daily. At this time, we plan for students in our Connections programs to attend in-person learning Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 2:30. However, should a large number of families switch from remote learning to in-person learning, we will need to reconsider this plan due to the social distancing requirements and our space limitations. Online students in the specialized programs at all levels are able to continue to live stream into classes following their in-person schedules.
Along with the high school block schedule calendar, we're also publishing updates to our school calendar for the district. We've decided to leverage our last 2 remote planning days that the state has offered this year on March 22nd and April 6th. These 2 days will allow us to continue to prepare for another schedule change, which impacts instructional planning and strategies as well as to adjust our physical spaces to accommodate more in-person learners and socially distanced structures. We have moved the Institute Day from April 6th to June 10th to allow for staff to have an end-of-the-year planning day to wrap up the year as a collective staff and prepare for the next school year. The last day of school for all students will now be Wednesday, June 9th. And as I stated at the March 1st board meeting, the 2021-2022 school year planning has been underway. The most desirable plan, and one we are actively planning for, is to have all students in person every day following our traditional schedules that we abruptly shifted away from on March 13th of 2020. The high school schedule will convert back to the 8-period day with lunch in the building. This fall, we will follow ISB guidelines and offer a limited, fully online structure for students who need a medical or household exemption from in-person instruction, and will have a parent or guardian complete an exemption request. This request for fully online learning will be in place for the entirety of the fall semester. We'll need to consider if online students can participate in extracurricular activities to best ensure the health and safety of the students and families requesting the exemption. It is critical that we plan a parallel scenario to our traditional school day that includes 6 feet of social distancing with limited space consideration only if mandated by the state to implement a modified schedule of instruction. It is our hope that ISB, CDC, IDPH communicate their expectations and guidelines early so districts like Naperville have the proper time to respond and shift if any further restrictions are placed on the districts or taken away. Dr. Knowlton will now update you on our vaccination efforts.
This slide summarizes where we are with respect to vaccination across the district. First bullet addresses the fact that we, in collaboration with Wheaton Warrenville 200 and Empower Health Services, invited 500 plus staff to participate in 4 clinic vaccination days. One of those days is actually tomorrow. Additionally, many of our staff have participated in an opportunity we had with Edward Elmhurst Health, and of course, many staff have also sought the vaccination on their own, just through relentless efforts to try to find a place where they're available. Meyer Pharmacy, in addition, provided a independent, secure educator portal link for us that was distributed to all staff. In terms of vaccination status of our staff, as of the conclusion of last week, I have on there that approximately 80% of our staff are either fully or partially vaccinated. Fully vaccinated breaks down to 65%, partially is about 15%. If you compare that to the state's somewhere around 12% fully vaccinated. So our staff have made tremendous efforts to get themselves to a place where they're fully vaccinated. That number reflects all 4 unions' participation in a voluntary survey that ended up capturing about 75 to 80% of our total staff and responses. And then lastly, we continue to collaborate with the DuPage County Health Department, Regional Office of Education, as well as other superintendents within DuPage County when we make decisions moving forward.
And as we have said numerous times, communication during this time is critical, and I encourage everyone to read and watch all the messages coming from the district and schools thoroughly. We'll be continuing our surveillance screening campaign for the remainder of the school year and encourage everyone interested in participating to reach out to their building administration to sign up. That concludes our report for this evening.